Ricochet leaving. We talked about this. We talked about Ricochet a couple of weeks ago, saying is he better served somewhere else. Anyway, it seems that Ricochet, after our last podcast, could well be leaving. Briefly, Tony Khan said something like obviously he wouldn't answer the question. I prefer not to talk about someone who's under contract with somebody else. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago, Will Ospreay had hoped that Ricochet would leave WWE after, quote-unquote, the appalling way he was being booked. So it now seems like that is indeed the case after Ricochet was hastily booked to lose the WWE Speed title. And we talk about AEW having too many belts. This is the lamest belt since the 24/7 title. Anyway, he lost it to Andrade. And then on Raw this past Monday, Ricochet is helping Ilya Dragunov in the back when Bron Breakker obliterates them both. Lawn darts Ricochet into a production truck and Ricochet takes a horrible landing. And then Bron Breakker does a power slam onto a car as the show ends. So, you watched it. You watched the finishing story to write Ricochet off TV. What do you think of that? And what do you think of many things, but what do you think of that specifically?
Well, I like the way they wrote him off. You know, the people that know, but the people that don't know, that is a way to write him off. And my personal opinion about Ricochet, he does beautiful moves in the ring. Beautiful. But after you've seen it, you've seen it. And I was reading something that apparently said, I guess on this show, that he couldn't draw you any money. No, he can't draw you any money because they've never really given him a story. And he's not the greatest talker in the world. He is a great technician inside that ring. And he's good for the second match, the third match is what he's good for. And there are some people who've made a living for years and years and years just being the third match or the fourth match on the card. Not necessarily the first match, but so where will he go? I think he'll probably float around to some of those Japanese promotions and some of the other promotions and he'll make money. He should have money. How long has he been with WWE?
Oh, I don't know, 5 years or 6 years or something like that, I bet.
Well, he doesn't look like a big spender, doesn't look like a drinker, doesn't look like a drug user, so he couldn't spend any money on that.
You're saying he's not spending a lot of money on food?
No,
he's quite slim.
Yes, and he's very, very good. So they wrote him off in the right way. Now everybody knows what happened to him. You know, sometimes you can watch, you say, what happened to this guy? How many times have you done that? Because you could be watching, if you watch AEW, they'll start a guy and put him over 2 weeks, then you might not see him again for 2 months. Then you say, what happened to that guy? They come out here and, blah, blah,
You're describing
blah.
half the AEW roster.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You don't even know they're still there. So I don't know what Tony's doing. Is his business. He can do with it what he wants. But what he's doing is not working. And I mean, as far as getting fans to join in and watch the show, if you watch it, you sit there, you go to sleep. I'll go to sleep out of boredom. And there's a lot of things I don't like about AEW. That 3 announcers and that 4 announcers sometimes. Why? I don't get it. So, but it's not my company. It's not my ball game. I'm not on the team, so I'm just watching it like a fan.
Well, you're not watching it.
Well, I don't think anybody's watching it, really.
No, about 700 and something thousand. Well, because we're basically talking AEW, I think we're both expecting, as most people are, that Ricochet will end up in AEW sooner rather than later. Right, because, I was mentioning the injury list, and Pac's name came up. I believe, actually, he's not on the injury list anymore either, so it's the worst injury list in the world. But I'm sort of thinking Ricochet would be like Pac, the former Adrian Neville, as in, well, he'll turn up occasionally, he'll put on a good match, and then you won't see him again for ages, and he'll be overpaid for the amount of work he does.
Mm-hmm. Well, if he shows up, and Will Ospreay is his main advocate on the talent side, because he would love to have a match with Ricochet. And I would like to see the match the first time. The second time, unless they tell a story, what's the purpose? So if they get him over there with Will Ospreay and they tell somewhat of a story, but they may have something. If not, he's just like he said, you'll see him one time, you may not see him again for 2 months, but he'll be paid. He'll be paid well.
Mm-hmm. He'll be flown there every week, I'm sure. Now,
okay, so his girlfriend is who? Samantha Irving?
Yeah, the ring announcer, yeah.
And somebody's asked the question, will she be going too? I'm going, wait a minute, guys. We're talking about that announcing job is a pretty important job. And I doubt if she'll leave just because he leaves.
They're not married with kids.
No, they're not. They're not married. So I doubt if she's going to be leaving. So I did like Cody the other night. He said, now, Samantha. And she said, I know what you're going to ask. And he said, can you do it? And then she announces him again. And the way she does it. So that's getting over a little bit. So she's got more personality than most of the AEW roster does. And she's just an announcer. So give somebody something to do. And they'll get over.
There's some people who don't like Samantha Irving.
Well, maybe that's the right. Sure who doesn't like her?
Some gimp on Twitter, I'm sure. Like, I don't like her for whatever reason. Bring back Howard Finkel, that kind of thing. Howard Finkel's dead, I know that, but
Well, I'd like to see him bring back Howard too, and maybe
I would tune in for that. I must say.
Yeah, I would, but I think she's pretty good at what she does. Nobody's going to do it just like her. She's not perfect, but she looks like she'd be fun. When she was announcing Cody when he won the title, she started crying. And people noticed that. So I think she does a pretty good job.
I was going to say, it wasn't that bad. I mean, no need to cry over it. Very briefly,
that's good.
Very briefly, going on the Bron Breakker Ricochet thing. Right, there were two things that Bron Breakker and Ricochet did as an attack. One, okay, the second one was the power. Yeah, I'll come to that last. The first one where they did the old lawn dart thing. It's an old spot from the early days of Nitro. Kevin Nash did it to Rey Mysterio. Very, very famous.
Stuck him
straight in there. And then the way that Bron and Ricochet did it, they did a mistake. And I don't think too many people have realised it, because like at the end of it, Ricochet just splats on the concrete. And I heard people go, man, why is he putting in so much effort if he's leaving? But if you look closely, Ricochet's leg or his ankle gets trapped on Bron Breakker's shoulder. And instead of being able to sort of like put both feet down, he tries to put both feet down. He can only put one foot down, and he ends up flipping himself over and landing on the floor, which was a terrible, terrible looking landing. Did you notice this? Or
I didn't notice this, but he's lucky he didn't get hurt.
Yeah. Well,
that's one of the. Well, it could be hurt. He did this, and he did a good job. He's on his way out, but he's still doing his job. That's why I have a lot of respect for him, because usually guys leaving, they're not going to put that effort in, because unless they're doing it for a friend. But I don't know Bron Breakker if he's a friend of Ricochet, but they asked him to do it, and he did it to the best of his ability. And I would hate, and he would too, for him to get hurt, and which would maybe delay him going somewhere else. And he could get hurt. It could be probably a long time before he would recover and even be able to take another spot somewhere.
There was, of course, at the end, the power slam through the car windscreen, real glass, Crimea River. Mm-hmm. I wonder if CM Punk's upset somewhere watching that at home. Very briefly as well, before we get off Ricochet, in other news, MVP recently revealed that he wanted to include Ricochet for the Hurt Business group with Bobby Lashley. Shelton Benjamin was the other one, I think, maybe. But he was told he could only have one of two people between Ricochet and Cedric Alexandra, and he went with Cedric. So Ricochet ended up not in the thing, I guess. Sticking with the same episode.
Well, I actually think that benefited him.
Do you think?
Yeah, he'd be in a tag or he'd be in a group. I think he's better off by himself. I really do. And that has enough drawbacks of its own, but I think he'd be covered up in the group. And if somebody was going to lose, it'd always be him, and because he loses all the time anyway. But if he does win, it wouldn't surprise anybody because, he's so good. They need to tell a story with everybody. I can't beat it to death enough. Because AEW, you look at WWE, from first match on, every match has just a little bit of something. And that's the way it used to be, and that's the way Memphis was when it was hot, and that's the way Puerto Rico wasn't that way because guys were too green to even carry a story. But still, I would put them in something every now and then and see what they could do.